no board of directors in the world would hire someone with so little experience to run a large business, much less the Department of Defense, where American lives are on the line regularly.
In this exchange, Senator Gary Peters contrasts two sharply different models of military leadership, one grounded in constitutional duty, professionalism, and nonpartisanship, and another he argues has produced instability, secrecy, and declining accountability at the Department of Defense. The questioning centers on leadership failures, mishandling of sensitive information, and whether senior officials are truly held to the same standards as the service members they command.
Both before and during your confirmation hearing, we discussed your commitment to duty and to adhering to the Constitution, as well as your oath of office. And I certainly appreciated your reassurance that you will remain, quote, a nonpartisan leader through and through, unquote, with one of your top priorities being maintaining the independence of the U.S. military. Along with remaining apolitical, I'm sure you will agree that fostering a stable, mission-focused environment is essential to leading the Department of Defense. So my question for you, sir, is can you please share with this committee and the American people what your approach to leadership as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is?
Yes, sir. It's certainly the job is one to understand the global set of challenges, integrate the options that must be considered, and then to present those options to the president. And I've always taken a servant leadership approach throughout my career based on my oath of office and the Constitution and my commission.
And as a nonpartisan leader, you reiterate that?
Always. Yeah, I reiterate that.
Well, thank you. And as a former lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve, I certainly agree with that and agree with your answers and your commitment to the men and women in uniform. Secretary Hegseth, your approach to leadership, I believe, stands in direct conflict with the ideas that we just discussed with General Kaine. And at a time of great chaos and uncertainty in the world, I'm extremely concerned that your many shortcomings could have potentially life-threatening consequences for American service members. In your confirmation hearing, I expressed my deep reservations about your qualifications to run the DoD. I also made it clear that no board of directors in the world would hire someone with so little experience to run a large business, much less the Department of Defense, where American lives are on the line regularly. For this reason, in addition to some concerns we had about character, I ultimately opposed your nomination. And unfortunately, my reservations have become reality. I know my colleagues have touched on some of these issues, but to briefly summarize, you have failed to set the example, or lead from the front, as you like to say. And this includes prompting a leadership and oversight vacuum at the department by firing qualified uniform leaders without cause, creating loyalty tests and leak investigations that have led to 5 of your senior advisors resigning or being fired, sharing classified military details on an unsecure app during operations in Yemen that included unauthorized individuals on at least 2 separate occasions, and revoking the DoD personal protection detail for both Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and the former chairman of Joint Chiefs Mark Milley, putting their safety at risk while they are still under threat from Iran. We have seen time and time again how your conduct, lack of personal responsibility, are harming readiness, reputation, and professionalism of our military. At a time where Israel and Iran are in open conflict and our adversaries in Russia and China will exploit any weaknesses, unfortunately, my worst fears about your leadership shortfalls, unfortunately, have been realized. Secretary Hegseth, I firmly believe that accountability from leadership is vital in all sectors, not just in the military. And demonstrating to your subordinates that everyone plays by the same rules helps to build trust and open communications within your team. And those two things are extremely important. And I know that you share my desire to ensure that we're holding our senior leaders accountable for actions. And during your nomination hearing, you stated, quote, accountability is coming because everybody in this room knows if you are a rifleman and you lose your rifle, they are throwing the book at you, end of quote. You also said that leadership has been unwilling to take accountability, and I couldn't agree more on how important accountability is. As we all know, at the request of this committee, the Department of Defense Inspector General launched an investigation into your use of Signal, an unclassified commercially available messaging application to discuss information pertaining military actions in Yemen. So given your focus on accountability, how will you demonstrate this accountability to the men and women in the U.S. military if the Inspector General finds that you improperly disclosed information?
That assessment is pending at this time.
That is a hypothetical question. But the gentleman's time has expired.
I think your answer is clear. You are not going to be held accountable.
Thank you.
This confrontation highlights a growing concern within Congress that accountability at the highest levels of the Department of Defense has become optional rather than foundational. Senator Peters frames his critique by first reaffirming the core values expected of senior military leadership: adherence to the Constitution, political neutrality, and a mission-focused command environment. These principles are not ceremonial. They are essential to maintaining trust within the ranks and ensuring that military decisions remain insulated from personal ambition or partisan pressure. By contrasting General Kaine's stated leadership philosophy with Secretary Hegseth's record, the senator underscores what he sees as a widening gap between principle and practice. Kaine describes a model rooted in servant leadership, disciplined judgment, and presenting professional options to civilian leadership. Peters argues that Hegseth has instead presided over disorder, creating a leadership vacuum by removing experienced uniformed leaders without clear justification. Such actions disrupt institutional continuity and discourage honest counsel, replacing professional expertise with fear of reprisal. The criticism becomes more severe when addressing operational security. Allegations that sensitive military information was shared on a commercially available messaging application during active operations in Yemen raise serious questions about judgment and discipline. In the armed forces, even minor security lapses at the junior level carry swift consequences. When similar or more serious conduct at the top goes unanswered, it sends a damaging signal throughout the chain of command. Standards are flexible for those in power. Peters also highlights decisions that appear to place personal or political considerations above safety and continuity, including the removal of protective details for former senior defense officials who remain under active foreign threats. Such moves, he argues, reflect a troubling willingness to use institutional authority without regard for long-term risk. At a time when geopolitical tensions are escalating, these choices project instability both internally and to adversaries watching for weakness. The senator's argument is not merely about past conduct, but about the erosion of accountability as a governing principle. He cites Hegseth's own confirmation testimony, in which the secretary pledged strict accountability, emphasizing that enlisted personnel face severe consequences for even minor lapses. Yet when confronted with the prospect of personal accountability pending an inspector general investigation, Hegseth declines to answer, dismissing the question as hypothetical. That refusal is revealing. Accountability that applies only when convenient is not accountability at all. This moment crystallizes a broader institutional problem. Congressional oversight relies on transparency and a shared understanding that no official is above scrutiny. When senior leaders evade clear answers, oversight becomes performative rather than substantive. The result is a Department of Defense increasingly vulnerable to politicization, internal distrust, and strategic miscalculation. The exchange ends without resolution, but not without clarity. Senator Peters' closing remark, that accountability will not occur, lands as a stark assessment of the current leadership environment. It reflects a deeper fear that the guardrails protecting professionalism, readiness, and constitutional order are being weakened from within. In an era of global instability, that failure is not abstract. Its consequences, the senator warns, will ultimately be borne by the men and women in uniform who are expected to uphold standards their leaders appear unwilling to meet.